Guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, March 27th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about some special elections and regularly scheduled elections set to take place next week that might be Donald Trump's first real reckoning when it comes down to electoral politics and the elections that have been taking place under his second administration, roughly 3 months, 2 months in actually. It's felt like 3 months, probably felt a lot longer for many people here. But taking a look at what we will be seeing over the coming days is a lead up into special elections in states like Florida, in states like Wisconsin, and we just came off a number of special elections in state legislative races. States like Pennsylvania and Virginia have been holding elections that have been giving us a general idea on a more localized level amongst, voting populations of 30,000, 40,000. Where we're at is that these races are indicators at least of something. Now, I've seen some people comment about how the 2024 election, in theory, would have been good for Democrats had special elections held true. And I totally admit that the special elections did not, in fact, predict with 100% accuracy of what we might expect when it came down to a Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump matchup. But what special elections are very good at predicting, and historically have been very great at doing so, are lead-ups and run-ups to midterm elections, and often can indicate that there is some level of discontent with the incumbent party. What I think we learned from the 2024 election, largely in relation to special elections, is that they're not everything, but they do provide a unique moment of acknowledging what high turnout voters look like, people who are the most likely to vote in historical context that has always been the most conservative voters. In this time, it has become more democratic since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. What we're starting to see is a reversion in some demographic groups based on those who are most likely to vote. The more educated voters, historically speaking, when it came down to it, especially compounded with factors of race and income, tended to lean more conservative. Those who were older who turned out to vote tended to lean more conservative. In 2014, Republicans had a massive turnout on their side, but it was one of the lowest turnout elections of the 21st century. Just 40% of registered voters won, and yet Republicans won the most seats they've ever had in the House of Representatives in the 21st century in 2014. Why? Because those voters turned out. What we're learning now is that in the Donald Trump era, it is a combination of those same voters who turned out in the special elections of 2024 that showed us that in suburban regions and in more wealthier groups in a higher education bracket here, what we're finding is that those voters are turning more towards the Democratic Party. But now we're starting to see Democrats win in districts they should never have been able to win in before, that they wouldn't have been able to win in 2024, 2023, 2022, or 2021 when Biden was president of the United States. Why? Donald Trump's popularity rating is dipping. Where did he begin with? I think the Silver Bulletin does a good job at showing just how it has changed over time. Unfortunately, I'm really sad to hear about this. FiveThirtyEight is gone. If you haven't noticed, if you go to the website, ABC cut, got rid of all of their employees, had a very talented team, might I say. Very disappointing decision there. But that means we're going to be using places like the Silver Bulletin from here on out, discussing the approval rating. But regardless, what we find, Donald Trump had a net 12% positive approval rating when he first took office. And that's not really surprising. Biden was up 30-something points, right? This is always how the honeymoon period goes. But it was the length at which Donald Trump was able to extend this honeymoon period that was really alarming for Democrats on the congressional level, on the national level, and there's good reason to think so. Because Donald Trump, who had largely been the person that nobody liked, suddenly became way more liked than he had ever been before. And we saw that in the approval. But as is the case with Donald Trump in terms of his approval rating, we're actually seeing it decline at the same exact rate it did in 2017. And so although he's starting from a higher starting point, he still is now in the net negative. So what does that mean? Well, it means the Democrats are going to, combined with the voters that were already going to turn out for them, regardless of who was president, now they're winning over groups of voters that they were not winning before, largely to the disaffection of Donald Trump as president. When we think about how quickly Americans can change their mind, we forget that it is quite literally overnight that millions upon millions of Americans made their decision that, they were not voting for Biden, but voting for Kamala Harris when the switch happened on July 21st, 2024. There are many instances where overnight or over the span of a week, and in this case 2 months, the approval rating and the expectations of a candidate's respective vote share in an election can change by just a few factors. And for Donald Trump, we have seen that a huge chunk of this country has changed their mind, not necessarily of just approving to now disapproving, but those who had no opinion, who are now adamant in the strong or lean disapproval column. And those are the voters that are turning out against Donald Trump. The last thing I'll mention here that I think what could really be a big reckoning point for Donald Trump is that this will be the first real set of elections that will be taking place that have congressional implications, that will have statewide implications since Donald Trump took office. And the one thing about Donald Trump and his base is that they almost always turn out for him. But when he's not on the ballot, forget that. The Wisconsin Supreme Court race and the Florida special elections in the congressional districts, I have no doubt in my mind the Florida ones will go to the Republican Party. That really doesn't take me by surprise. The Wisconsin one, though, I think will be an interesting test because Elon Musk and many major Republican donors have been funneling millions upon millions of dollars for the conservative candidate, to which the liberal side is responding nearly with one-to-one donation dollars to what is being put in by the right, and also funneling millions upon millions of dollars into the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. But it is Wisconsin, a state that Donald Trump won in 16, lost in 20, won back in 24, that will give us a good indication of what we can expect to see in terms of pushback against Donald Trump. Because these elections, these ones with Brad Schimmel and Susan Crawford and Supreme Court races, one, the implications are heavy, right, when it comes down to what's happening in Wisconsin with redistricting and state regulations and a number of different laws surrounding the abortion rules and regulations that were put in place. And then, now we're seeing a point where Republicans are about to lose the state legislative majority, but if they win back this Supreme Court race, that could all change, yada, 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 right? We know that a lot of things are on the line here. But it is the state of Wisconsin that is one of the best swing states, one of the best indicators of where the national sentiment is. Because Donald Trump won Wisconsin by 2 points. He won the national popular vote by 2 points. Wisconsin largely votes with the nation. And so it will be interesting to watch who's inspired, who's turning out, and maybe this will be a big point where Republicans can shine through and say, you know what, we still have our base. Donald Trump might be unpopular, but it's nowhere near where it was in 2017 at this point in the first administration, which is true. And they could really shine through. But I'm becoming less and less confident of that when I start to see things like what's happening in Pennsylvania's 36th Senate District, where Democrats win a district Trump won by 15 points. Or that Democrats are still fired up, they're still raising money, they're still getting into it, and now there are town halls all across the nation where Republicans are starting to look very bad. The optics of it aren't good. They're never good when you have to go to your constituency and you hold town halls, and now you're getting drowned out in boos and pushback. Even in states like Wyoming, you're starting to see people turn out, and that isn't to say that there aren't Democrats in these states. I guarantee you those rooms are normally filled with Democrats. Rarely ever do you find that many disaffected Republican voters. After all, this nation is still very polarized. You don't want to conflate rally size or town hall size or town hall pushback as concrete evidence that Democrats are doing significantly better, that Democrats will do significantly better. What I do think, though, it shows that there was a level of disaffection that can be studied, can be seen with Trump's approval, can be seen with the approval of congressional Democrats and Republicans. And the extent at which I think will impact Donald Trump and the Republican Party, I think will be heavily seen over the coming year. We're going to talk about something a little bit later today, a little bit more relevant. I'm going to put aside the video I was going to make about the Democratic Party base turning on congressional Democrats. I'm going to push that to tomorrow. I promised you guys I would talk about it. I think it's important. But today we got a piece of news roughly an hour ago that Elise Stefanik's nomination to the UN ambassadorship might be withdrawn. And this is something that's coming from a White House official. And a big reason for this is because of the slim House majority. You might be wondering, why does that matter? Well, it matters a lot when Democrats are winning in places like this and the Republican majority is holding on by just 3 seats. You heard that correctly, just 3 seats. Come the next election, if Democrats win 3 more seats than what they have right now, they have the House majority. The average pickup in a midterm election for the opposition party from a president is well over 3 seats. It's in the double digits. The average, meaning that Democrats would have to far underperform the average performance for the opposition party. That even in the most insane years, the overturning of Roe v. Wade is a good one, 2022, Democrats expanded their governorships, right? Democrats expanded their seats in the Senate, but the House, Republicans still gained 10 seats, and it flipped it from Democratic control to Republican control. Elise Stefanik has a race and a seat that Trump won the district by 21 points. She did even better. But without her, without the incumbency advantage, and what we're finding here is that Democrats can win races when there is no incumbency advantage from the Republican Party. Elise Stefanik's race, her district, they're worried might flip blue. And so instead of having her as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, which I'm sure Stefanik might be very upset about, right? She's one of the first congressional Republicans to get out there and jump on the Trump train. She's been with him from the beginning, but she has been very, very big for him in the reelection, not necessarily in the very beginning. Let me not say that. But in the reelection, she was very on it in 2020, very on it in 2024. So this has been in the running, right? Stefanik has wanted this for a while, and it seemed that it was near guaranteed. Stefanik has no problems getting through the Democratic confirmation votes. She's a lot less controversial than Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr., and even they made it through. But it's the worry about the congressional seat. And so when I think about these races in Wisconsin, these races that are coming up in Florida, there is a very strong possibility that Democratic overperformance continues to terrify the Trump White House, continues to say, you know what, that maybe there is this enthusiasm on the Democratic side that Republicans just simply are not able to combat right now with Trump's approval rating being at this point. And honestly speaking, it likely is only going to get worse. We've seen this story before, and although Donald Trump came in with a higher starting point, it is rare that a president ever maintains a level of popularity that's in the net positive their entire presidency. It has never happened in modern American history. There's never been a time at which we've had substantive polling that a president has maintained a popularity rating consistently in the positive. And less than 2 months in, Donald Trump has already reached the negative. It is only going to get worse. And Donald Trump has no more elections left to win. No more elections left to run in at all. He won't be on the ballot in any states. He won't be there to drive the base out in the same way. And these real tests here, these tests that are already happening on a more minuscule level, are in fact worrying the national GOP, are in fact worrying people like Donald Trump. And so we're going to see. Next week, I think it'll be very interesting to watch how the Wisconsin Supreme Court race ends up, how the Florida race in the Florida 6th District here, very solid one, right? When you think about 2024, Florida was very solid for the GOP. There is no doubt in my mind that these districts should be all but solid for Republicans. I just want to show you to give you an idea of what we can use as a point of comparison next time. What happened here, right? Matt Gaetz won in Florida's 1st District by 32 percentage points. Florida's 6th District, Republicans won by 33%. 33 and 32. Those are the numbers that will be used as points of comparison. And any overperformance is noteworthy. But more than that, too, I think what it will tell Donald Trump and the Republican Party is that they're at least losing some ground. The extent of the ground being lost, we don't know. But they're already losing seats in states where it matters. Pennsylvania, the state Senate race, that's going to matter a lot, especially after 2026. The approval rating of Donald Trump isn't helping either. It's not on an upward trajectory. It's on a downward trajectory. We went from plus 12. Now we're at -2, a 14-point difference in 2 months of Trump being president, and Democrats are fired up. And so I think that's what's going to be this big point here that Donald Trump and his administration are going to have to contend with, which is that some of these policies, the involvement of Elon Musk, Doge at large, some of these more outlandish statements that are being made, people like RFK Jr., all of these people associated with and around the Trump administration aren't doing enough to help make the average voter say, I feel comfortable with voting for Donald Trump. I do think there is a lot of buyer's remorse out in the country, but I don't want to overstate it. I don't think if you were to rehold the 2024 election that much would change. Maybe a few states. I think ultimately, though, Donald Trump would still be president today because his approval rating and his favorability rating still remain to be higher than at 99% of his presidency in the first term. We have to remember that. At the same time, though, it was only in 2010 when Democrats lost 63 seats. 63 seats in the House of Representatives in 2018. Why does that matter? Why do I tell you this? Well, what did I just mention? The approval rating of Donald Trump. The approval rating of Donald Trump now being higher than where it was before. But in 2022, looking at the House elections, 2010, Obama's approval rating was only down -5 points. Isn't that surprising? Right? That's something that really shocks me. Obama was only down 5 points, and yet the reaction from the nation was that Republicans were going to win 63 seats. Baffling. That a disapproval of a net -5 resulted in this much losses for the incumbent party. So even though Donald Trump may be down 2, and Republicans will tout this and say it's higher than where it was before, but he's still in the negative. And we've seen voters turn on presidents for being roughly where Donald Trump is today, voting for the opposition party in ways we have never seen in recent memory. We do have 2018. I'd say that's recent enough, but it could be more than that this time around. And even though his approval rating might be holding strong, we are seeing the early signs that we saw in 17, that we saw in 18, that led into 19, that eventually led to the Democratic victory in the White House in 2020. And while I'm not going to say this is 100% what we're seeing, again, the first big reckoning needs to be that first stepping stone for Democrats. It needs to be 10 to 12 reckonings, right? Even more to get to the point where you can even comfortably say it's a trend line consistent enough that I could say we can start to discuss the White House. We can't talk about it just yet, but it matters. And these things are things to watch for next Tuesday, April 1st, a lot of elections coming through. And it'll be interesting to see what the White House does with Elise Stefanik, depending on some of those results. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 post-election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.